So welcome back to Sports Bruisers Bills edition. And for this one, we'll be discussing the Week 12 recap of the horrible Texans loss, the shocking one, or maybe not surprising, I should say, for because of how this team has played this year, in a brutal one. Sorry for anyone or for most people who stayed up to watch it to the end when they kind of giving you a somewhat glimmer of hope to win and then fall apart right at the end. Typical Bills fashion with that. But it was 23-19. Even though it was close, even though the Bills still had opportunity in score-wise to win this game, again, the final drive and so forth, it felt like not even close that it was possible. I mean, I've seen some people even write on Twitter as the game was going on where the Bills were down at 7 at one point, but just felt like much more. It felt like 70. It felt like so much more because the offense was just so bad in this one. Defense too had struggles, but they, locked up and played a little better in the second half. But can I give them that much credit because you were going against Davis Mills? You're going against an offense that struggles, and I did this in my preview for the Week 12 matchup. Going back to my notes here, real quick of what I've said here. It's just, when I talked about it was a polar opposite of how both teams are. The Bills statistically are one of the best teams in NFL, especially coming off of that great performance on Sunday against Tampa. 6 touchdowns by Josh Allen, over 40 points. First 40-point game of the, second one of the year outside of course, the Ravens game week 1. And it was the opposite and bad defense, too, on top of that. But it was the opposite. It was a great defense, number one in the league. They were top 3 in all categories by the score, how they do their rankings for statistics, but horrible offensively. And it showed that. Yes, they scored 23 points, but the defense did its job in the second half. They only gave up 3 points in the second half, but the Bills only scored 3 points in the second half as well. And that was the biggest thing. I mean, we can chime in about the defense, talk about how bad it is. The run defense, too, was bad as well. They let, going to the rushing stats, Woody Marks, 16 carries, 74 yards. I mean, Nick Chubb wasn't really that much of a factor, 6 for 16. Longest run for Marks was 19 yards, but again, it gashed you here and there. Got locked down in the second half, but it wasn't that much of a challenge for the defense. It was more of the offense just trying to replicate half of what they did last week, at the very least for that, and they still struggled. That defense was relentless. Going back to what I said here for takeaways, they got to stop the pass rush or at least slow it down, and they were far from that. Now, it's unrealistic to assume, with Anderson and Hunter to hold them both down to 0 sacks, which would be unbelievable if they could, but it was unlikely. I thought maybe 2-3 sacks at most you can afford. It was 8 sacks. Every single time that Josh snapped the ball, it was relentless. It was not even just from those two, but for other people as well. If you go to down here what they have for the sack total, you have Henry Tutu, or Toto, how you pronounce it. He had 1 sack. Hunter had 2 sacks. Will Anderson had 2.5 sacks. Tim Settle, former Bill, had 1 sack. Derek Burnett, former Eagle, had 1 sack. Mario Edwards had half a sack, leading up to 8 sacks in total. It was relentless from that defensive line, especially again from Will Anderson and Hunter. They dictated the game. Again, even though it was close in the score, it just didn't feel like it because the offense could do absolutely nothing. And it's a combination of everything on the offense. Offensive line did a bad job. I know Spencer Brown was banged up and he was struggling, and eventually he was taken off out of the game towards the end on the Vits. Josh Allen, just with the horrible interceptions, the scrambling around, not throwing the ball away, kind of converting back to early Josh in his career. The play calling was abysmal. Again, I mean, look at Khalil Shakir had over 100 yards, but that was really towards the end of the game. Outside of that, again, there was screen passes, this and that, short passes, predictable offense that people know going to this one. And this is a team that lacks counters. It lacks being the ability to pivot and work, think on the fly. And you saw that. You look at everyone else, it was, again, similar to how it was last week. And again, we can rave about the 40 points, and it was great being the prisoner of the moment. But again, Ty Johnson was one of your top leading receivers. That should not happen. It's nice to see them finally throw the ball to the running backs as well. You had Cook 3 for 13, Ty Johnson 3 for 45. But who was going to step up in the wide receiving room? I said that too in the preview of is going to be a challenge for this receiving group. And no one stepped up. Gabe Davis, 1 of 22. He gave you a typical Gabe Davis, showing here, where he has a good start to the season, or good start to the season, but a good start to his Bills debut this year, and then does nothing, which is what he's done in his years past, where he has one good game or great game, and then a ton of other games out, multiple week stretch where he does nothing, like stuff like this. And again, that wasn't even last week wasn't even that great. It was only 40 receiving yards, but it was more than what Keon Coleman was giving us. And still, he reverted back to a Keon Coleman game. So I mean, I have no problem going. Side note, I have no problem with Keon Coleman being a healthy scratch, but it doesn't do any favors of showing like, oh, look how much better the offense looks without him on there. It did nothing. Shavers, who I thought after a career game last week, deserved to get a bigger role, did absolutely nothing in this game. I don't think he even got a target in this one. So he was not a factor as well. Palmer, 2 of 21. Like I said, Gabe Davis, 1 of 22. Knox, 3 of 17. Elijah Moore put up a Shakir game like last week. 1 catch for -3 yards. It is nothing. You have an offense that lacks any type of talent whatsoever that we've known throughout the whole season thus far. And maybe it was predictable going back to after the Bucks won that. It seemed predictable, like the Chiefs to Miami game, where you have a great showing at home and going away to Miami, absolutely brutal to watch. And it was saying too, had a great showing against Tampa at home and a bad showing against the Texans. Both offenses that have question marks, especially for the Texans that don't really have that much talent outside of Nico Collins. C.J. Stroud is down. How do you feel about him? Still, again, missing their starting quarterback. You are facing a backup quarterback that can't run the football that well. Doesn't really have that many playmakers outside Nico Collins, and you still made them look bearable. You made Davis Mills look like a good quarterback. You made this running game that lacks that much talent, that much success, look really good in Woody Marks, and it's very frustrating. We could bash the defense all we want and Bobby Bavich and so forth. We know it's typical. I think there's not too much you can talk about. Offense, you could say the same thing, but that was the main story, is this one where Josh just played bad. He did flat out. I'll get back to the defense in a second, with especially the sacks. You see on the right-hand side there for Davis Mills, 0 for the Bills. We'll get into that in a second. But for Allen, it was abysmal. I do put some blame on him, of course. Again, everywhere, it goes all across the board with the offensive line, the playmakers, or lack of talent, I should say. Joe Brady, Josh Allen. It's a combination of everything with this one. And it's, projecting a little bit further into the season, which I'll make a separate video really going into about Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, and that part of it. I don't want to put that in this one and be more focused on this game from yesterday. But I have no hope for the rest of the season. Like, yes, they might make the playoffs, but they'd be lucky to win the wild card matchup or whoever they face. It's just absolutely abysmal. It's going to be kind of a Steelers type of season where they just do the bare minimum to get in, and then that's pretty much it. And then we kind of it's a one and done, early access out of the playoffs, and who knows what happens. Probably nothing will change, but again, that'll be for a separate video for that one. The only other people that did well was James Cook. He had a great run, 45 yards to start off the game, get the Bills on the scoreboard early, and you thought, okay, maybe this is the tone setter right here. This is good things to come, a nice build off of what you did against Tampa Bay. No. I mean, if you want to talk about highlights, if you want to talk about just entertainment wise, of just how for important moments in the game, it was really just that first drive by the Bills and then the final drive of the game, where they actually did something. Even though they didn't score any points in the final drive, it was just the offense was doing something with that one. The only creative thing they did was that hook and ladder, or that lateral to that one at the end for that fourth and long. It was a 4th and 26, 4th and 27 from Palmer to Shakir. That was it. That was the most creative thing that Joe Brady did the whole game. I mean, you could say that for a while now for games, and it's just that. So James Cook was your only great player on offense. If you want to throw in Shakir, even though most of his production came at the end, you could throw in Shakir because he still had over 100 yards. And that's pretty much about it. I mean, it was absolutely brutal to watch here for that one. So going down the list there, no one stepped up. Allen was bad, and it goes to offensive line, and also Parvin too taking sacks as well. Play calling, like we talked about, defense. Bishop was the only good player that really stuck out to me, even though Boyer was the leading tackler this game. It just, for me, Bishop was the only one that I think played well, and that was pretty much about it. What else? 0 sacks. Yeah, let's get to that real quick. 0 sacks. Yeah, when you have a relentless defensive line that actually has playmakers on that side of the ball, that actually can draft players that are playmakers. Yes, you see the difference. 8 sacks for 70 yards that Allen lost. What did they do against Davis Mills, who's not a mobile quarterback, who has this great talent in Greg Russo, who has this great talent in Joey Bosa, and whoever I want to throw out there? They did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. They got 0 sacks. This is the same problem was going back to the first one against Miami. They won the game barely, but they couldn't sack Tua, who is on a bad offensive line, who is not that mobile. You just couldn't get to him. The Miami game as well, you couldn't get to him. And what would you do against Davis Mills, a backup quarterback? You couldn't get to him. And that's just been the theme over and over and over again. And again, I'll be more and dive into the Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott video over that one. But it's you see the difference. You see the polarizing difference. Again, even though the score was close, it didn't feel like that. You saw a defensive line that can actually get to the quarterback, not just make some pressures, not almost get there, actually make pressure and get to the quarterback and sack him, as opposed to the Bills that did not make it difficult at all for Davis Mills at all. I know that the second half they did nothing really, 3 points. So I guess you want to say they did their job there, but again, that defensive line did absolutely nothing to get to sack Davis Mills, and that is embarrassing. It is utterly embarrassing to see there as well. And again, going back to what one of my notes I put down was, again, just going back real quick to Woody Marks. You made him look effective. Again, another non-star, third string, how you want to put it as, second string. At least I don't know how he's in the rotation. I know Nick Chubb was kind of their leading rusher, at least in some of the games I've saw. So I'm not too dived into the Texans' offensive running, the running depth. But again, at least for the Bills, you would probably say like a nobody, just off the name. It's just not really that much of it, a nobody per se. Well, it's right or wrong to say that, but you made him look effective. You made William Marks make effective to a run offense, a rushing attack that is lacking. That's very lackluster. And again, this Bills defense, this Bills team in general, makes any bad team look good, regardless for that one. And it's just pretty much what it comes down to. Oh, sorry, real quick, going back to players that played well. Ray Davis with his kickoff return touchdown, which thankfully he had that, because if they didn't, the Bills would be really screwed over in this game. No doubt about that. You take that touchdown away, that's 23-12. At that point, I mean, just look at the final score at least, but it just shows you how bad it was. I mean, the offense, if the Bills did not have that Ray Davis touchdown, this would be much worse. Of course, like not saying that, pre-stating the obvious there. Prater missing an extra point too on top of that. So it definitely changed the dynamic of the game, where instead of having to go for a touchdown, you would have just gone for a field goal, and who knows what would have happened overtime. We don't have the best history with that, but it still would have given you a chance, no doubt about that. With that, and again, I think it just feels like the Dolphins game, really how we felt after that loss, where you feel like hope is lost. And I don't want to hear about, it's still a Super Bowl caliber team. It's still, we still got Josh Allen. We're still 7-4. It's just, you see the kind of writing on the wall that this team is. I kind of tweeted out too a little bit, where just this team just lacks talent. They lack playmakers. They lack creativity. They lack any way to pivot and to think on the fly. Like I said earlier in this discussion, it just shows that they are bare bones, plain. It feels like Kevin Dorsey is doing play calls again. It does. I mean, it is utterly shocking of how drastic Joe Brady's play calling and the success has gone from last year to this year. And maybe it was the same. Maybe it shouldn't be a shock. And maybe it was just Josh Allen just made it look really, really good last year, and it was just defenses just didn't know how to attack the everyone eats mentality. But they figured it out this year, no question about that. And it's a huge dip off in quality and production and creativity, however you want to put it, as from last year to this year, where Josh Allen wins the MVP, where they were one of the best teams in the league, where they made the AFC Championship game and were close to going to the Super Bowl again. And this is not even close to that. It's a team that's nowhere close to being Super Bowl caliber. This is the offense that I don't trust at all to get in a shootout, no doubt about that. And again, a team that is dependent on the if they make the playoffs, if they hold on to do so in the wild card, whoever they match up to, I'm not even confident that they're going to win. And they're going to have to obviously go on the road on top of that too. However that may be, if it's the Chargers or the Ravens, however it shakes out to be at the end of the year, I just don't trust it. No doubt, no question about it. And yeah, I mean, just how it is. That's how I feel about it after the game. And this, unfortunately, I apologize. This is kind of just all over the place and feels more about our Rams as opposed to how it was for the Buccaneers. Recap that I made here, but it's just kind of just a shot in the heart. It is. It's just very upsetting, but again, at the same time too, it shouldn't be, because this is how this team has looked for a few weeks now. Even if you want to go back to early in the season when they were on, winning the first 3 or 4 games, that you saw the cracks in the foundation, and you saw things that kind of foreshadowed what was about to happen, and you had the same problems with that. So I just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, going to next week, if you look at the remaining schedule, showing the quick stats there too. I mean, Allen with turnovers, 2 more interceptions to get to 9 total for this one. James Cook over 1,000 yards in the season, and you see your stat leaders here for the year. Khalil Shakir, leading receiver, with 564 yards. And you go to the schedule here for the remaining next week that we have is Pittsburgh. Now, these are two teams that are pretty much identical in how they're playing. Two abysmal offenses that are struggling, defenses that are hit or miss, even though Steelers have more talent on that side of the ball, at least with TJ Watt, when you have a difference maker there. So better there in that aspect. And it might be a snooze fest. It might be a very bland, boring game. I don't know who's going to win that. I would not be surprised if the Bills win it or when they lose it, because the Steelers are almost a mirror of what they are for each other, and I'm there for head coaches too, if you want to talk about that too. So I just don't know. I just don't have any hope for moving forward. And you have the Steelers, you have the Bengals, Patriots. Obviously the AFC East is gone, so that's not the build up to that game. Has no implications whatsoever. It might be fighting for a playoff spot at that point, so it might be something on the line, but I doubt they can beat the Patriots, the Browns. I would love to say it's an easy win, but you saw Miami, you saw Houston. That's not anything for certain. Philadelphia, the Jets. So we'll see what they do for their remaining schedule. But going into next week, I'm more interested to see if Keon Coleman is activated at this point, because of just how bad the receivers looked in this game. I don't want to say it's desperation at this point. You could probably put it as. So we'll see with more time in between for this, or from yesterday into the next game, if Keon Coleman can earn himself a spot back on the starting position again, and see what he can do there. And we'll see what happens with moving forward, some of the injuries that we saw. Give you some updates, tweeting about it as well. See what who's going to be in or out, and how it looks going to Sunday against Pittsburgh on November 30th.